Hey guys, welcome back to Carbon Creations. This is Rajat, and in this video I'm going to talk about how I put in the shades or the tones in my drawings to draw realistic portraits like these. Now I've been getting some queries from you guys asking how to get started with shading, or is there any particular process that you should follow. Now I know that drawing can be overwhelming when you do not know where to start from. So I decided to make this video to help you guys out, and I really hope that you guys learned something from this. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is second video of the series. In the first one I've talked about how you can use the grid method to draw basic outline of the portraits or anything else that you want to draw. So make sure you watch that as well. Link is given in the description down below. I also need you guys to get these art supplies. These are just a bunch of school grade art supplies and you can easily get them at any local store. Once you do that, we'll get going. Okay, so the first thing to consider is where do you start the shading from? There are a lot of options for this. You can obviously start from any part of the drawing, but I like to draw the values, to put in the shades right from the top of the portrait and gradually build up the values towards the bottom. How this helps is you don't have to worry about the shades being smudged by your hands. And obviously that is not any hard and fast rule. You can try drawing from any part of the portrait. You can start it from the eyes, from the nose, from the lips, anything. But just make sure if you are doing that, you just place a thin sheet of paper beneath your hands so that the smudging of pencil, smudging of graphite is restricted to the bare minimum. Next thing you should consider is recognizing the different values. What I mean by values is darkness of the pencil that you are using. If I was to place these values on a scale, then on one end you will find the highlights that is completely white in color, and on the second end you will find shadows that are completely black in color. Now in between these two extreme values, all the other values come. And if you see the gradation, you will find that the lighter the values are, the closer they are present to the highlights, and the darker the values are, the closer they are present to the shadows part. As for this video, I will suggest you to use the 2B, 4B, 6B and 8B pencils, and if you are to grade them on the scale, then you will find their arrangement to be something like this. Now unfortunately, the only way to recognize these values, to know which value is present in the reference pic, you need to have little bit of practice. Yes, it might seem intimidating at starting, but once you keep on drawing, you will definitely see the results, because by continuously drawing different subjects, what you are doing is you are training your eyes as well, and that is really very important in realism. Obviously there are also some tools present for that, like there is this strip of paper, you have different values on it. Just place it on your reference pic and try to copy the same value on the drawing paper. But I don't prefer that, because once you get used to observing the values properly, recognizing them properly, you don't really need that. You don't really need that grading scale. Now you know where to start the shading from and how to recognize the values, what the basic values are. So the next thing that you should know is how to know the area within which a particular value is to be placed, particular shade is to be done. Now if you have watched my previous video, I had talked about not completely erasing the grid lines, because the grid lines that you used earlier to draw the basic outline of the portrait can now also be used to put in the values, to determine the areas within which a particular value is present. So make sure you watch that video as well, and that will be really very helpful. And here's a video to better explain this. So I wanted to put in the real footage in this one, but that was really very slow and it was not working out well, so I had to speed this up a bit. Still, it is pretty straightforward. You first put in the lightest shades using the 2B pencil or the HB pencil, and then gradually build up the tones towards the darker ones. Here I have put in the darker shade right beneath the spectacle, that is supposed to be shadow of the spectacle, and shadows don't really require much of a smooth transition. They are supposed to be sharp because, well, they are shadows. However, while working with skin textures, cloth textures, you have to be really very certain that there is a smooth gradation from one value to the other. You don't just jump from one value to the another There should be no distinct boundary. It should kind of gradually fade away. That is the whole point of realism. Obviously you can achieve that with blending, which we will discuss later on, but right now just focus on shading part. Put in the shades using 2B pencil. If you're not satisfied with that value, just make it a bit darker by using the 4B pencil, and be really very slow. I am going to repeat that again and again because realism requires a lot of patience. So you need to be really very certain about where you put the pencil marks, how you put them. Be unidirectional with the strokes of pencils. Don't just be haphazardly shading. That will not look good at all. Unless you are going to blend. Well, blending evens all of it out. Now you might say that I am starting with the darker areas at some places. That is completely fine because now I've been drawing for quite some while, and once you get used to it, you can work your way around from the darker to the lighter shades. But as beginners, you should focus on putting in the lighter shades first and gradually building up the shades to the darker regions. Another important part of the process is how to properly blend two or more than two values. If there is no smooth transition between two values, then it is near impossible to achieve realism. To do that, either your shading should be really very well, you should spend quite some time on shading, or you can use blending as well. Now by blending, what I mean is any unevenness that is present in the shades in the values can be evened out by using the blending tools like Q-tips or the cotton swabs or the blending stumps. I prefer using the Q-tips. They are cheap and they are easily available at any local store. I feel like blending is a too important part of this process, and I think that there should be a separate video for this. So for now, just have a look at this real-time footage, and that will pretty much explain how to do the blending, get you started with it. But my suggestion for you is that don't just rush into it. You see, right from the beginning I thought that blending was the only way to make my drawings look more realistic, but the way you put the textures in your drawings is also really very helpful. That is the reason why I have added the real-time footage of drawing Walter White, because in that I have not blended the shades at all. Still, it turned out to be really very good. So just have a look at it and you will definitely take something away from it. Okay, so we have seen the basic intro to the process of shading in the previous clip, and it was pretty straightforward. As for this video, we will be talking about blending and determining the regions within which a particular value is to be placed. Before we get into that, I will again remind you, first of all, not to put too much pressure on the pencils while shading. That will mess up the texture of the paper, and that is not good at all. The quality of paper, the texture of paper also plays really very important role in realism or in drawing anything at all. So be really very light on your hands. Don't rush into anything. Don't just put in the dark values all of a sudden. Go on building the values, building up the tones layer by layer. As you will see, I am also marking out the darkest regions, the shadow regions and the highlights, and that is also pretty straightforward. Just have a look at your reference pic. Find out the areas relative to the grid lines, and since you have not erased the grid lines on your drawing paper as well, or they are really very light, just visible to the eyes, you'll find that it is just easy to mark out these areas. Once you have put in the basic shadows, highlights and other values, you can blend in using the cotton swab. Just take one of the cotton swabs and go on rubbing the shades that you have put in. It's that simple. Again, make sure that while blending you do not put too much pressure on the cotton swab. If you do that, that will leave some undesirable marks. And let me tell you that these marks are not easy to get rid of. So prevention is better than cure, right? Don't put too much pressure on the cotton swabs. Take good care of not messing up with the highlights, because they are supposed to be completely white. If you do mess it up due to some reason, make sure to rectify that using eraser pencil. Now you will see that as I go on blending the hand, the textures, there is a smoother gradation from one value to the other, and this is looking much more better than before. And that is the whole point of blending actually, that any unevenness, any shortcoming that was present in your shading due to any reason at all, that will be rectified by blending. So yes, that looks pretty good right now. Now I'll start working on the rest of the shading. Here I will first mark out the areas within which I have to place particular shades. For that, again, you have to look at the reference pic again and again, and you are seeing that as you can see in the video, I am pausing for some moments in between. That is when I am actually looking at the reference pic, just making sure that every pencil mark that I place is in the right place. Grid lines are really very helpful during the entire process, so make sure to watch that video as well. And another thing that you should take care of, your pencil shades should be unidirectional. If you are shading in the vertical direction, just make sure to do that at least in the nearby areas so that it does not look clumsy. As you can see, since I am kind of an impatient guy, I did not spend much time on shading here because I knew that I was going to blend these tones later on. And that's what happens when you get too much reliant on blending. That is why I suggest you guys to work on your shading as well. You are completely free to use blending as well, but if I was to put it in the simplest language, blending is kind of an advanced move. So the primary move that you should know, the primary technique that you should know is how to shade properly. And trust me, if you learn the proper way to shade, you will not be that much reliant on blending, and that will save you quite some time. So here it is, the hand is done, and as I said earlier, it looks clumsy right now because of the uneven shading. But once you go on blending the shades using the cotton swabs or the blending stumps, you can clearly see the difference. That is the whole point of blending, to even out any discrepancy that had crept in due to one reason or the other. So that's it guys, this was the basic intro to the process that I follow for shading my portraits. Again, there is a lot that I could not discuss because else the video would have been really very long. So what I am deciding to do is I will be doing more elaborated versions of this in the upcoming videos, so don't worry about that. For now, I feel like this video is just right to get you started with shading. I've told you about the basic process that I follow, basic steps that you have to take. And still, if you have any more queries, feel free to hit me up on Instagram and I'll be happy to help you.
So that's it guys, I really hope that you learned something from this video, and if you did, just let me know in the comments down below whether you enjoyed the video or not, whether you learned something from it, or if there was anything missing, just let me know in the comments and I will try to include it in the next video. Also, if you have any queries about this video, about the previous videos, about anything related to drawing, just hit me up on Instagram and I will be happy to help you out. So thanks a lot for watching.